Hours after the shooting in Oregon last week, and before we even knew the details about what happened, President Obama called it routine and said this.
What's also routine is that somebody somewhere will comment and say, Obama politicized this issue. Well, this is something we should politicize. It is relevant to our common life together, to the body politic.
Since then, he and many on the left have done just that by calling for stricter gun laws. Today, he was in Oregon to meet privately with the families of victims. Hundreds were out protesting the visit and criticizing Obama for using the tragedy to push his political agenda. A lot of criticism here coming from the left saying that the president is using this opportunity to his own political advantage. How do you see it, Kirsten?
Well, it's true that it is to his political advantage, but I also think that if you are a person who thinks that we need to have stricter gun laws, that it bothers me that whenever there's a shooting that people say you can't say that or you're being political. It's like, well, okay, but that's my position. I think that we probably could have some stricter gun laws. It's true also that most of these shootings wouldn't necessarily be prevented with some of the stricter gun laws. And so we have to look at it more specifically about what would help. So I have mixed feelings. I don't think he should have said, I'm going to politicize it, but I also think he's right that we've got to really get serious about this.
Agree. Very good. However, earlier today we were hearing that President Obama was not adverse to possibly using the executive pen, the executive order, to change some of these gun laws, the ones he likes, specifically mandatory background checks for everyone. Even if you're a father that wants to leave your son a gun, he's going to have a background check. So there'll be some pushback. But there's some concern. We just got a rough transcript of some of the things he said in Oregon just a minute ago. And it wasn't about gun laws that was so alarming to me. It was a line where he said, yes, it's about the families right now, but he also said, we're going to have to work on these rights. You're not going to work on the rights. We have a Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. You can work around some of the laws and play your games with the executive order and try and get stuff through Congress, but you're not going to work on the rights. So I think, but the problem is, I think that's what he really wants to do. He wants to play with the rights more than the laws.
Okay, Dana, what about the politicizing the situation, the fact that there was protesters out there, people really feeling perhaps the president was, again, using this to his political advantage, pushing forward his personal beliefs, his ideology, because, in light of the protesters out there?
I actually think probably in the White House's mind that they weren't actually thinking of politicizing this particular incident because it actually was one kind of convenience. The president was planning to be on the West Coast for the weekend anyway. He was already out there, and I do think that he takes his role seriously as the comforter in chief, as he's described it, and a lot of presidents have to play that role. One of the ways he could avoid not looking political would be to meet with the families privately. I'm sure that they were happy to see him and comforted by him, and then not give a speech.
Okay, and
that would be one way.
And the president, in the comments that he just made, moments ago, talking about that, he cares deeply about what happened and the victims here. So, Greg, what you see is the gun rights advocates out there, in force, saying it's one of the signs you saw there, Obama not welcome. But he is the president of the United States. He would be criticized if he didn't show up and say something.
Well, the gun argument and the abortion argument are complete mirrors of themselves. The left thinks that the right is using the Planned Parenthood videos to ultimately ban abortion. The right thinks the left is using mass shootings in an effort to get rid of the Second Amendment. So they're both the same. You're somewhere in the middle. There are people that are angry about this and about that, but neither of them are necessarily correct. There's a dangerous thing, though, here, and I do agree with Kirsten. You should be able to politicize an issue. If it's your opinion, it doesn't matter if it's political or not. But a symbolic action that is used to soothe your soul can actually be dangerous because it replaces real action. But more important, it elevates risk because Obama's visit expands the spectacle of an event. It globalizes the deed. It contributes to the infamy, and it acts as a recruitment for sickness. For example, he's contradicting his own beliefs. He doesn't focus on the inhumanity of ISIS because he believes that if you look at what ISIS actions are and you talk about them, that attention adds as a recruitment tool for more young men to join. How is this any different than creating a spectacle out of a mass shooting? We should, as a media force, ignore or treat this as a mundane tragedy and move on rather than create a spectacle, he contradicts himself. Because you should be treating these gun massacres the same way he treats ISIS, which is you do not focus on the infamy of this. You move on and you crush it later.
Okay. Well,
does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I guess so. What are the steps he's supposed to be specifically taking right now? When you said treat it like you would, ISIS, and not focus on the infamy of it, but you crush it.
I would use the same advice that I've said many times here: is that you report it, you stay away from the visuals, you do not mention the guy's name, you do not talk about any. You offer solace to the victims, but you move on. You have to move on because. It's the same thing with teenage suicides. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with suicide pacts. You add a spotlight to it, it creates. It's a bug lamp.
It helps it breathe.
Well, yeah. I'm not sure he's trying to solve the mass shooting problem. He's trying to get He's trying to get support for change. That's
right.
That's why he puts himself in, amongst people crying and the families, and then he can be very heartfelt and sorrowful and say, and we're going to really work on these rights very soon, as soon as I get back to D.C. And then he does garner support, so he can make changes that he wants. So I see what you're saying, but when he does it, he's politicizing it right in Oregon right now.
Hillary Clinton this week also intimated that as president, she would use executive orders to restrict gun rights. I mean, that's what she said it as well. So it's bigger than just President Obama, and this will probably be a big topic at the debate next week that CNN's hosting with the Democrats.
And that'll be an exciting debate.
I cannot wait.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. We got Lincoln Chafee. I have my money on Chafee.
Okay,
I do.
He's got nowhere to go but up.
He's the dark horse. So now from the domestic,
sounds like a jogging injury,
to the foreign policy front. The Pentagon announced today it's going to stop training rebels in Syria to help fight ISIS. So we're basically, giving up the fight? And according to a new report, Obama's foreign policy team is finally admitting that Putin's involvement in Syria is to prop up Assad and target his opposition, not to go after ISIS. But the president is downplaying the situation.
When I came into office, Ukraine was governed by a corrupt ruler who was a stooge of Mr. Putin. Syria was Russia's only ally in the region. And today, rather than being able to count on their support and maintain the base they had in Syria, which they've had for a long time, Mr. Putin now is devoting his own troops, his own military, just to barely hold together by a thread his sole ally.
He's challenging your leadership, Mr. President. He's challenging your leadership.
Steve, I got to tell you, if you think that running your economy into the ground and having to send troops in order to prop up your only ally is leadership, then we've got a different definition of leadership.
Okay. Apples and oranges in the fruit bowl there, Dana. I mean, he's talking about the Russian economy, but he's thinking, so what he's doing over here is trying to prop up his only ally. It's not an appropriate answer to the question and the criticism.
But this has been what the White House has been saying for a long time, that they talk about people operating from a position of weakness, right? So we get a psychology lesson every day from the White House about how, this is actually, he's just acting out as if he's like a 2-year-old that needs to have a timeout. In the meantime, the world is what it is, and it is ugly, and it can be mean. And you have somebody like Putin who, yes, might be throwing a tantrum, but he is doing so with weapons, and he's actually killing innocent people, and he's disrupting any sort of stability that we had in that region. And so the thing about ending the program is so interesting to me. The headline today, Obama administration ends Pentagon offensive. I'm like, that indicates that we were actually doing something
to begin with
in the first place. I mean,
right.
The general 2 weeks ago testified that we had only trained 4 to 5 people that actually fight with us. So you can't really end a program that you never actually let DOD implement.
Right. Well, so let's see what's going on behind the scenes there and what POTUS is going to do next in Syria, because some interesting information.
I would recommend
the Intelligence Committee.
I do recommend people read the Robert Gates and Condoleezza Rice wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post today that I thought was spot on about stop psychoanalyzing President Putin, and here's some actual concrete things that you can do to try to improve the situation.
How do we fix it?
Well, first, we don't do what we did, as Dana points out. We trained 5 fighters to fight ISIS. 5. It cost us $500 million. $500 million. $100 million per fighter. And then, by the way, they stopped the program.
We should have just sent in Ronda Rousey instead. Might have been more effective.
They asked for $600 million for next year, for 2016. I mean, they don't. I would stop sending them money. They can't figure out what they're doing. Yesterday, Josh Earnest said that the White House thinks that President Putin is playing checkers. Have you seen the airstrikes? The Russian airstrikes, they're going all in. And you may have questions where they're going, who they're hitting, but they're not playing games, and they're certainly not playing. We should learn the game of checkers that they're playing and try that game a little bit. And as for Putin is driving the Russian economy into the ground. I don't know where you get that. The Russian economy is based solely on the price of oil and minerals. Oil prices dropped by over $80 a barrel. That's what's driving the Russian economy into the ground.
But, Bolling, let me tag back on you on that, because is it really the CIA's fault that they can't get them trained? I mean, is that what you're suggesting? That is it?
I'm saying they handed over $500 million to train fighters. They were supposed to get 5,400 fighters. They got 5 on one hand, a basketball team. That's what they got. So stop whatever program that came from. Definitely don't do it again in 2016 because they're asking for $600 million. Stop it unless you want 6 more anti-ISIS fighters. It's insane. They're spending. There's no plan. They're all. No one knows what they're doing. They probably even know who they're supposed to train to fight.
All right. So, Kirsten, what is the strategy here for the administration?
Well,
because that's what seems to be very murky.
Yeah. Well, the administration didn't want to do this in the first place. They didn't want to arm the rebels. They did it reluctantly after pressure, and they shouldn't have done it. Especially, I mean, I don't think they should have done it because I think it was a bad plan, but they especially shouldn't have done it because they didn't believe in it. And if you don't believe in it, you shouldn't be spending money and American, time on something that's not, because it's not going to work if you don't believe in it, right? So I think what's happening is the president, his mentality is he doesn't want to get into another war. He doesn't want to be bogged down in the Middle East, and he comes into every situation with that attitude. And so they have really misjudged Putin, I think. They really have misunderstood what he's doing, what he's up to, and really been caught flat-footed.
Right. Well, Mitt Romney didn't, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they've been caught flat-footed, and so I think they're trying to adjust, and they don't really have a plan.
All right, Greg, do you have a plan?
Yes, I do have a plan.
Thank you.
It's Friday. Going to go out and get drunk. But
after Facebook Friday, please.
This is okay. Russia is a reminder that the world mocks the assumption of the American teacher's lounge. We have a leader that was raised on the quad, playing hacky sack and sniffing patchouli. Putin is KGB. Obama is KY. All jelly.
Oh my God!
I want to talk about the Syrian rebel training thing was designed specifically to fail. It was minuscule and ambivalent on purpose. It was made to collapse so you can say afterwards that these things are supposed to fail. Remember when you were a kid and your parents wanted you to do a chore and you did it so poorly, so badly that they would never ask you to do it again.
Only boys do that.
Yes, but President Obama, that's his strategy with foreign policy. I'm going to do it so badly that when we leave, people are grateful. He says, I suck at this. Trust me, guys, I'm not good. I'll just hang back. Then Putin could go in and finish the job. That's what he's doing. This was not an accident.
I don't agree.
Can I throw something out here, too? Why don't you stop with they're playing checkers? They're the JV team.
Because that didn't work before. Bad analogies.
And this interview is going to air on 60 Minutes Sunday night. So Ernest yesterday says checkers. This is going to come out saying Putin doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's failing. And the guy's doing nothing but destroying everything he promised to do. We should just step back and go, you know what? We didn't really handle this the way we thought we should have, and let them figure it out.
They're trying to play the perception is reality game. If we keep saying that, Russia and Putin really are very bad at this and they're super desperate and they have a bad economy, and they're trying to prop up their only one ally, we look silly and foolish because the actual reality in the field is quite different.
Do you remember over the summer, one of the generals testified that the biggest threat to the United States was Russia? And there were a lot of people that made fun of DOD for that, saying, really? How could you say Russia when ISIS is cutting off people's heads? Obviously, ISIS is our biggest enemy. DOD has actually been pretty much ignored by the National Security Council during this administration, and I think maybe it's time to rethink that and allow them to have a voice to allow them to do what they need to do.
Well, the CIA thinks the same thing.
Agree.
As a matter of fact, and has.
No, I was just going to say that this is exactly how The Godfather worked. It's like Michael Corleone. We're Michael Corleone, America. We cannot leave. We always will be pulled back, so we don't leave.
Can I just fix one thing?
Sure.
Corleone.
Yeah? What?
Corleone.
Corleone. Hey, I'm not Italian.
I am. This half.
You make me feel like Fredo.
You can tell by the tan. All right.